Hello everybody, my name is Adam Flores and today I want to share with you the research that I did into the uncertainty reduction theory and its application to the interpersonal communication process. Now from the very beginning, God created human beings to be social creatures. He created us in His image and He created us to be in relationship with Him and with each other. Now the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 2 that after God created Adam and all of the animals, He recognized that Adam shouldn't live alone, so He created Eve out of Adam's rib. He did this so that Adam would have somebody to spend his life with, a partner, somebody that he could form a relationship with. And so while it's clear to us from the very beginning of time that God intended for humans to interact with each other and form relationships, humans inherently experience levels of uncertainty and unease when we find ourselves thrust into new places or interacting with unfamiliar people. Humans also have an innate desire to eliminate or reduce uncertainty whenever we can. Now in 1975, Drs. Charles Berger and Richard Calabrese formulated a new theory that they called the uncertainty reduction theory. Now the reason they created this is because they wanted to be able to describe the communication process that occurs between strangers when they initially form relationships or start interacting for the first time. And one of the central assumptions or beliefs of the uncertainty reduction theory states that when strangers meet, their primary concern is one of uncertainty reduction or increasing predictability about the behavior of both themselves and others in the interaction. Now, all this is saying is that if I meet somebody for the very first time, I don't know anything about them. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they're like. I don't know what their background is. And I don't know how they're going to react to anything that I say or do in our interactions together. So I'm going to be inclined to try to find out some information about them that's going to help me give a better understanding of who I think that they are, or at least help me predict how I think that they're going to react in any of the things that I say or do during our interactions together. And one of the primary ways that individuals reduce uncertainty is through communication. And there's multiple forms of communication out there that can be utilized, but verbal communication is the primary form that most people use to try to attain knowledge. Berger and Calabrese stated that there are three strategies that individuals can use to try to reduce uncertainty: the passive, the active, and the interactive. Now, the passive strategy is one where you are simply trying to observe an individual to gain knowledge about them. Let's say that you find somebody attractive that works in the same building as you. You don't know who they are, but you know that every day you wind up riding the elevator up in the morning when you go on to work. Now, as an observer, you might try to just take a look to see what the individual is doing while they're in the elevator. Maybe you peek over and see that they play the same video game on their phone every day. Or you might see that they are always carrying a book, and maybe they're a history buff or a sci-fi buff based off the titles of the book that they're constantly carrying. Or maybe they have a gym bag with some running sneakers in it every time that they're on the elevator with you. So maybe you think that they are into fitness and they like to be healthy. These are all methods of you trying to just simply observe an individual and gain knowledge about them without actually interacting with them. Now the next method would be the active method. Here you're going to proactively try to find out information about an individual, but you're still not going to interact with them yet. Maybe you know that the individual works on the 5th floor and you've got a friend that works on the 5th floor too. You might ask your friend, hey, do you know this individual? Can you tell me anything about him? Try to find out some information from somebody else that knows the individual. And finally, the interactive strategy. This is where you're going to actually take the steps to try to communicate with the individual that you're seeking to form a relationship with. You might ask questions to try to get their background, and you might also give them information about yourself to try to help open the lines of communication. Within the theory, Berger and Calabrese established 7 axioms or truths that they believe were universal to uncertainty reduction. Now, I won't go into all of the theorems or the axioms, but I picked out one that I thought was particularly interesting, and that was the axiom of similarity. And all this states is that if I meet somebody for the first time and I don't know anything about them, there should be a certain level of uncertainty there. Now, I might be a Cowboys fan, and I might happen to see that the individual that I just met is wearing a Dallas Cowboys jersey. Automatically, I can assume that there's something that we have in common, or there's a similarity there, which should automatically reduce the level of uncertainty that the two individuals have with each other. Now, if you take the 7 axioms and you pair them together, you wind up coming up with 21 theorems, which Berger and Calabrese believe that you should be able to test, and the testing should show that the theorems hold true. Now that we've discussed what the theory is and how it's applicable to interpersonal communication, I'd like to share with you 2 areas that I specifically looked at in my research. Now, the first area was the formation of close relationships. In her book, The Experience and Expression of Uncertainty in Close Relationships, Jennifer Thies states that close relationships are fundamental to the human experience, and I believe this to be true as well. Think about these close relationships that you have in your life. That best friend that you have from high school. Maybe it's your college crush, or possibly even for those of us that are married, our spouses. Those individuals that we have dedicated spending the rest of our lives with. These are close relationships, and they're very important in our lives because they provide avenues for us to receive support. We can find affection with these individuals. We can ask for advice. And most importantly, this is where we get our companionship. Now again, these relationships are very unique, each of them in their own special way. Think about that best friend that you have in your life. That one individual that you know you can call day or night, no matter what your issue is, and they're going to be there to listen to what you have to say. And they might laugh at you a little bit, but at least they're going to listen to what you have to say. Or maybe they'll even drop everything that they're doing and actually meet you somewhere and try to help you out of your jam. Now that's a very unique relationship, and that's a bond that is hard to break. But when you stop and you think about it for a minute, you have to remember that even that relationship started between 2 strangers. At some point, you didn't really know that much about that individual. Something at some point drew you to be attracted to them or just find them interesting and want to become friends with them. I remember my best friend from high school, his name was Jimmy. Now, we were best friends all through high school, but our friendship or our relationship started in junior high when Jimmy moved from Missouri down to Texas where I lived. Now, we didn't know anything about each other. Families never met before, but Jimmy happened to be on the track team with me, and we were pretty competitive against each other. So every day in practice, we would try to go out there and beat each other. And over time, we started asking each other questions and finding out a little bit more about each other. We found out that we had a lot more in common than just running on the track team. And out of nowhere, eventually, we formed a relationship and we became best friends. And we're still best friends today. The next area that I looked to do my research in was that of social networking. Social networks and computer-mediated communication have become focal points of our everyday lives. Think about it. How many of us are on some form of social media every single day? Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, you name it, there's an app for that. And what are we doing when we're on these social media sites? We're posting status updates, talking about the fact that our favorite team won this weekend, that we're pumped that pumpkin spice lattes are back at Starbucks. Super excited about the fact that the weather's finally cooled off here in South Carolina, and now I can bust out the sweaters again. All of these examples are opportunities for us to post information about ourselves on the social media sites. But not only are we posting information about ourselves, but we have opportunities to see information about other individuals that are on the sites as well. Now, these sites are primarily used to cultivate pre-existing relationships. Like I said earlier, Jimmy and I are best friends, but after high school we went 2 drastically different directions. But because of social media, we had the opportunity to remain friends and get to post information about ourselves so that we can keep up to date with what our families are doing, no matter where we are in the world. Now, given that understanding, there still is opportunities for individuals out there to cultivate or try to initiate new relationships with individuals that they've never met on social media. Just look at the dating apps that are out there. All you have to do is try to find somebody that you're either attracted to or find that they posted a witty comment and swipe right. Now you have the opportunity to try to meet somebody new and engage in those uncertainty reduction strategies and see if you can find out if you're a match with each other. Athenas, Falkenberg, and Peter posited that while uncertainty reduction strategies are primarily for face-to-face interactions, all 3 can be used in computer-mediated communication. Lynn and Utz conducted research on social media sites, and they discovered that passive strategy was the most commonly used across the board. Now, when you think about it, that kind of makes sense. You have all of these users on these platforms, and they all have their own profiles where they're posting daily about these updates that we discussed earlier. And you don't even have to know these individuals, and they don't even know that you're looking at their pages half the time. All you do is scroll down through their page to see the history of what they've posted. And now you've had the opportunity to use the passive strategy to learn a little bit more about that individual. Now, while the passive strategy was the most commonly used, they also found that the interactive strategy was the most effective strategy. Now, in this situation, you had, again, an opportunity to find a page of an individual that you were interested in and maybe send them a direct message or comment on their page and start a conversation, asking questions and maybe telling information about yourself so that you can gain more knowledge and reduce the uncertainty between the two individuals. In conclusion, uncertainty reduction theory continues to be a staple of interpersonal communication research. Now, just like any other theory, uncertainty reduction theory has its pros and its cons. One of the pros of this theory is the fact that it's clearly formulated and it's easily testable. Many scholars have done a lot of research utilizing the uncertainty reduction theory and testing those 21 theorems. Some of the research has come back to support it, and some of it has come back to show that it's not necessarily accurate. Now, one of the cons to the theory is the fact that it fails within the generality of the theorems and the axioms to take into consideration some variables. Now, one of the ideas within the uncertainty reduction theory is the fact that the more information that we get or the more communication that we go through, the lower the uncertainty level becomes. So as I get more information from you, or as I give you more information, you know more about me, and therefore the uncertainty kind of goes down. Well, what this theorem doesn't take into consideration is the impact that negative information might have on that aspect. So maybe you gain some information about your spouse, but what the information is the fact that they cheated on you. Now, obviously, you've learned more about that individual, but by no means has that made the uncertainty go down. If anything, now you're even more uncertain about where your relationship stands. And on a lighter note, maybe you find somebody that you're looking to form a relationship with, and you think that they're a pretty cool individual, and then out of nowhere during your communications, you find out that they're a Redskins fan, and now all bets are off. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video, and I hope that you enjoyed my research on the uncertainty reduction theory. Thank you.